Today, we'll be talking about the 4 crucial shifts every chronically stressed woman needs to make to take control of her life. If you're a chronically stressed woman, then this podcast is for you. Be sure to listen.
Hi, I'm Jen Barnes, and you're about to experience how to ditch the old ways of doing things and move from being other-led to being self-led so you can live a life you love. Welcome to the Self-Led Woman Podcast.
Hey, it's Jen. Are you a chronically stressed woman who likes your life overall, but feel like it could be better? Maybe you see if only you didn't have to do more than 50% of the household work and carry the mental load on top of it, or if your boss didn't reward your hard work with more hard work, or if you didn't have to carry the emotional load of your workplace as the go-to person for emotional support, or if you weren't doing more than your fair share at work of unpaid labor, things like taking the meeting notes, planning the parties, being the emotional barometer or dipstick for your boss in terms of how the team is feeling. Perhaps you want a simpler life, something better, but you don't know quite how to get there. And of course you do. Quite frankly, the imbalance of workload between men and women right now is not just unfair, it's ridiculous. It's valid to feel angry and frustrated and resentful about this situation, to be mad about toxic masculinity and the patriarchy, to be mad at your boss, your organization, maybe your partner if you have one, or even your kids. And while it's absolutely essential to name and validate and feel and work through those feelings, maybe connecting with others around them, the problem is if you're focusing on those things, like the inequity, the toxic masculinity, the patriarchy, the unfairness of it all, this is what's actually keeping you stuck. The biggest mistake most chronically stressed women make is they stay stuck in these feelings. They stay stuck venting and complaining about the unfairness, the patriarchy, toxic masculinity, the ridiculousness of unpaid labor. There's certainly no shortage of that on TikTok, and I certainly partake. And those feelings are super valid, and sometimes it's important to connect over those things. But the thing is while that can feel validating, it doesn't actually fix the problem. In fact, when you focus on the broken systems and the unfairness of it all, it actually keeps you stuck in anger and resentment. And this is because these things are outside of your control. They likely won't be changing anytime soon. And so focusing on them just makes you feel more powerless. It doesn't have to be this way. There's something you can do about it, but it might be a little different than what you're used to, so bear with me. So I'm about to share the first of 4 ways for dealing with these types of stressors, these things that are outside of your control, like the patriarchy, for example. This step alone will help you step into your personal power so you can focus your energy, your time, and resources on what you can change and control. There's actually 2 ways to do this, 2 ways to address things, stressors, those things causing your stress that are outside of your control. I'm going to share my favorite one today, which is radical acceptance. So radical acceptance is the practice of accepting reality as it is. It means we don't fight with reality. We accept that this is true. It doesn't mean we like it, or it doesn't mean we agree with it. And it doesn't mean we won't do something later about it. But rather than fighting with the reality of it, we accept that, yep, this is the situation. And so like the patriarchy, you know what? It's here, and this is what's happening. And rather than being like, no, it's not okay, and only howling at the moon about it without any action, we're going to accept that, you know what, this is a thing, so that we can work through those feelings and spend our energy on change, right? If that's what we decide we want to put our energy into. It's the same as like, a couple months ago, I got a really bad haircut. And so to even it out, they had to cut it really short, which was not my first choice. And, for the first few weeks, I was super upset. And every time I looked in the mirror, I was like, complained to my sister a lot about it. I'm sure she knows. And none of that was useful. But once I was able to say, you know what, this is the deal, it'll grow back and actually mean it, right? Like I could say that early on, but I didn't actually mean it yet. Once I was able to do that, then I shifted my energy more towards, all right, what am I going to do about it? I'm going to try different ways to style it, see if that helps. I'm going to see if there's different ways of pulling it back, right? Trying to deal with it, or just being like, you know what? Screw it. I just don't even care about my hair right now. Right. And so practicing radical acceptance allows us to take our energy away from fighting reality and put it towards something productive. So, again, this isn't about suppressing our feelings or avoiding them. This isn't about, ignoring the problems. It's more about giving space for our feelings, accepting the reality, and then moving on so we can actually put our energy and time and resources into things that are productive, whatever that means for us. And so I'll use an example. My resistance to CDs in the 90s. And so those of you who are old enough to remember, we had cassette tapes before we had CDs, and we had CDs before we had digital music, right? And when CDs first came out, they were like $17.99. And it was like, no way in hell is anyone to pay $17.99 for a CD for the same music that they could get for $9.99 on a cassette tape. It's not going to happen. And I already have this really nice cassette tape collection of music. And so there's no way I'm going to put money into that. That's ridiculous, which is fine, right? But it hasn't started to become clear that CDs were going to be the way of the future. I was like, nope, nope. I fought the reality. I'm like, this is not what's going to happen, even at my own expense, to the point where I was teaching group fitness and I would have to lug the tapes along. I'd have to rewind them and fast forward them to get them to the right song in the mix for the workout that day. And even at the expense of getting to listen to a smoother sound, right? And so I spent a lot of time, energy, and resources fighting the reality of compact discs instead of spending time, energy, and resources on actually just, biting the bullet and being like, all right, yep, CDs is where we're at. And so this is a silly example, right? But the fact is when we fight reality, we spend our precious time, energy, resources on something that is outside of our control. And so with radical acceptance, we just accept that, you know what? CDs are the reality of life right now, right? And then we can shift our time, energy, and resources on what we can do. And in that silly example, it would have been focusing my time, energy, and resources on getting CDs. And so with bigger things like your chronic stress or the patriarchy or the dynamics at work or the unfair labor in your household, you might radically accept that this is a situation now. But then as you shift away from focusing on your anger about that, that will free you up to spend time, energy, and resources on learning what you can do instead. And so now that you know how to step into your personal power to deal with these stressors that are outside of your control, you might be thinking, okay, well, now what? Like, what is within my control? What can I do about it? So what I will say is the next biggest mistake that women who are chronically stressed make is they forget their personal power and their value. They forget that they have a voice and a right to advocate for themselves. They don't believe that they deserve their own energy, time, money, and resources, that they deserve their own best care. And so the next step is for you to do the deeper work of believing you deserve your own time, energy, resources, money, your own best care. And so imagine for a moment if you have a daughter or another beloved girl in your life. For me, that's one of my nieces. I mean, I love them both, but I'm thinking of one in particular around this. Imagine if she never took time for herself, always played what her friends wanted to play. If they like her bracelet, she gave it to them. If they liked her clothes, she gave it to them. If they wanted to play at their house all the time and never her house, she always did that. And that wouldn't leave a lot of time and energy going into her. If you saw that, wouldn't you be concerned? I would. While I love that my niece is super giving and loving, I also love how she respects her time, her energy, her brain, her emotions, and her resources. I love her ability to say, no, that's not okay. If she didn't, I'd be worried that the kids in her lives or even adults were taking advantage of her sweetness. And instead of actually enjoying her for her, they would just be using her for what they get out of her. And so you might think about that in terms of your own inner child and allowing that to happen with that little girl inside. So now that you know how to shift your focus towards what's in your control, and that you need to do the deeper work of realizing that you deserve your own best care, you've got some tools to start to help you take control of your life. But there's still two more steps to really help you wrangle it in. So the next step is helping you get over your fear of people being mad at you when you set boundaries. The number one mistake I see most chronically stressed women make, and a lot of women struggle with this, is they keep themselves small to avoid conflict or people being mad at them, or even maybe to get approval. But the problem is when you do this, you actually start to be small. You have needs that go unmet. You stop speaking up for yourself. And eventually you start to feel depleted, unfulfilled, and even resentful, noticing that people are taking advantage of your kindness and rarely returning the favor. And the thing is, it's true. When you set boundaries, some people are going to get mad at you. And some people will express their dissent rather forcefully or loudly in attempt to try and make you back down. Because the thing is they're upset because your lack of boundaries were benefiting them, and they're just trying to make you go back to letting them have that benefit again. It doesn't mean they don't like you. They're just upset, and their approach is to express their anger so you give in and go back to what you were doing. But in order to set and maintain healthy boundaries that honor you, your time, your energy, and your resources, you need to work through your struggle with conflict, your struggle with people being mad at you. And you need to connect with your inner courage to have what might become tough conversations at times when you start to communicate your boundaries with people. Further, you may need to learn skills for interacting with people when they do this, when they're upset with you. Perhaps trying to diffuse the situation as much as you can, recognizing most of it's on them. Or maybe learning how to walk away until things can be more calmly discussed. And so now that you're focused on what's within your control, you're working on believing you deserve your own best care, and you recognize that you need to learn how to be able to handle people's objections to your boundaries, you're ready for the final step, which is to communicate your boundaries in clear, kind, and compassionate ways. So here's what most people do, especially if they haven't been setting boundaries. I know I certainly did this at first, is they come on really strong with their boundaries. Like, nope, I'm not doing that. Nope, not doing that anymore. Right? Almost like a boundary bully. And the thing is they forget that setting boundaries is actually just really a conversation about what's okay for you and what's not okay, about what you will do and what you will not do. And when you do this, when you forget that this is just a conversation about that, when you start to be a little bit of a boundary bully, you inadvertently end up triggering people's defenses and increasing the chances that your boundary will be met with that anger, that conflict that you were hoping to avoid in the first place. So instead of having a conversation about the situation and whatever issues were coming up and what's okay for you and what's not okay, you end up in an argument, usually an unproductive one. So the good news is there are ways to set boundaries in clear and firm ways that are also kind and compassionate. And so a great example is Brene Brown. I kind of think of her as like the queen of boundaries, right? She's done so much great research and work on it. If you ever go to her website and look at one of her podcasts and you want to look at the transcript, if you click on read more or read transcript or whatever it is, screen pops up. And it actually says, well, first it says like the copyright, like we own the copyright to this, right? But then it says, here's what's okay for you and here's what's not okay. So it's super clear. And it feels really safe because it's like, oh, okay, if I do things that are okay, then I'm not violating her or copyright, right? I'm not going to be in trouble, right? Because she said this was okay. But then I also know what not to do, right? And so when we do that for others, when we very clearly say, like, hey, here's what's okay for me, here's what's not okay, we help them know how to treat us. We teach them what's okay and what's not. And that creates some safety in our relationships. So now you know 4 crucial steps for stepping into your personal power to address stressors that are outside of your control. But the problem is, if you're a chronically stressed woman, there's more challenges you face than just stressors that are outside of your control. Stress can get built up and stuck in your body. Your nervous system and emotions can be all over the place. You can have a hard time getting yourself to do stuff. And you might have even lost touch with your inner wise woman. And so there's actually 4 more crucial steps in helping you recover from the chronic stress you face so you can feel better in your body, do things you enjoy, love your life, and be self empowered. Without these steps, you might notice some improvement with what we went over today, but you won't be able to feel that full benefit of being self empowered. And so, if you're ready to make a change, if you're ready to be done being chronically stressed and instead move towards feeling good in your body, doing things you love, creating a life you enjoy that has you in it while still caring for others and being self empowered, I want to invite you to something. I am building out my program, The Self Led Woman Way, using ancient wisdom, neuroscience, and proven tools and techniques that I've used in my 22 years in the field of mental health to help you do just that, become self empowered. And so, if you're ready for a change and you want to do this alongside of me, where you'll get more FaceTime with me than you will in later runs of this program, and you'll be able to be there live asking questions along the way at a lower price point than will be offered in the future, I encourage you to follow the link in the show notes and check it out. You can read all about the program and sign up. Be sure to join today. Take care.